everyone, thanks for stopping by today and happy 4th of July if you're in the US. Today we're going to be working on coloring in the Sweet Treats watercolor panels by Simon Says Stamp. And there are 12 different watercolor panels in the pack. You can turn these into cards pretty easily after you color them in. And I'm just showing the different panels that you get if you were to purchase the kit. They're printed on watercolor paper, so I thought it would be fun to try 3 different coloring mediums to see how they hold up with this paper. So first we're going to color in one of the panels with Copic markers, and then we're going to move to Zig Clean Color Markers. They're like a watercolor marker. And then finally we're going to color in the third panel with some Polychromos colored pencils and see how that works out. And then at the end there'll be have a little contest for you if you want to play along. Okay, so let's get started and color in our first panel with Copic markers. So to start, I sped this up pretty quickly because the point of this video is to just kind of get a sense of how the different coloring mediums, how they work on the paper. But I also did try to keep it slow enough so that you can get a sense of the technique that I used in coloring it and the different marker colors that I use. So one of the first things that I noticed while using the Copics on this paper is that while it worked, the method worked, the color dragged a little bit and it didn't turn out to be, the color wasn't as vibrant as it would be if you used a Nina cardstock or a more Copic friendly cardstock. But it still worked beautifully, and I would definitely try this technique again and use my Copics to color in these panels. And in fact I do, and I'll show you another panel using Copics later on in this video. So I chose just to color in the little images with a rainbow assortment of colors. And here I'm just coloring in the lollipop. I'm using some grays on the white just to make the white stand out and not look so flat. And I'm not really following like any particular light source. I'm just kind of, I don't know, adding shading wherever it looks like it makes sense, if that makes sense. And that's one of the things I urge you if you're just starting out with shading to, not be so worried about where the light source is, but just try to, if you're going to do your shading, kind of try to use the same method for all the images in the drawing, so that wherever the light source may be, it's hitting it from the same spot. And then as you get more familiar with, coloring and shading techniques, it'll start to make more sense, and it'll just start, I think you'll just be able to kind of eyeball it a little bit more naturally. All right, so now I'm just adding some highlights with a white gel pen to the finished little panel. This is one of my favorite things to do when I'm done coloring. I just feel like the white gel pen accents add a really nice pop and vibrancy to the finished panels, and just make them really pop and look special. And I probably overdo it. I probably am a little heavy-handed on the white gel pen, but that's the style that I like. If you prefer to use less, I think that's fine too. Whatever makes you happy. All right, so now let's move on to our second coloring medium. Now we're going to use some Zig Watercolor Markers, and on the right there, I just did a little swatch so that I could become familiar with the colors. Because Zigs, I don't use them that often. I definitely use my Copics much more than these. I would say maybe 5% of the time that I color, I would use my Zig. So it's not a medium that's very familiar to me, but every time I get them out, I realize that they're a lot of fun to work with, and I always wonder why I don't bring them out more often. Okay, so here I'm just coloring in the little strawberries, and the technique that I'm using a dark shade around the outside edge of each of the images, and then I'll go back over it with a mid-tone and then blend it out with a water brush. Sometimes if the image is really small, I don't think that I use the water brush each time, but I definitely for all the images used at least 2 colors, and in some instances 3. So like for these little apricots here, or at least that's what I think they are, I use 3 different shades, 2 orangey shades and then 1 peachy yellow shade. Next we're going to color in the blueberries, and for the blueberries I used a dark blue shade and then a lighter blue shade. And for all these images at the end we are going to go over the entire panel with a white gel pen to add some highlights and make the images pop. So what I noticed with the Zigs were that the Zigs work very, very well on the watercolor paper. I mean, that's what Zigs are supposed to do. They're watercolor markers. And it was very, very easy and fast to color in the panel with the Zigs. Although, because there were so many small images, it probably took me about an hour to color this in. But I think if I were using my Copics, it would probably be more like an hour and a half. I definitely had to work harder when I was using the Copics to blend everything together on this paper. So I think where I come out at the end of this is that if I had to choose between Copics and the Zigs to color on this type of paper and to color in these particular panels, I definitely prefer the Zigs. And at the end of the video, I'm going to show you 4 more panels that I did using the Zigs. And you can let me know what you think. So in terms of how they look, in terms of their vibrancy, I didn't notice much of a difference, but if I had to pick a brighter, which color medium was brighter on this paper, I would say that it was definitely the Zigs. But again, the Copics and the Zigs look very, very similar, almost interchangeable on this paper. And in the end, I'm going to give you a chance to try out that theory yourself. I'm going to show some samples, and then I want to see if you can tell which are the Copic colored panels and which are the Zig colored panels. All right, so now I'm just finishing up by coloring in the word life with 2 different shades of green. One thing that I noticed about the Zigs is that it's really easy to be sloppy with them, or at least maybe I'm just sloppy. So at the end, I had to go back and cover over some of the instances where I went outside the lines with a white gel pen, but that worked perfectly. So if you are like me and you're a sloppy colorer, you can just use that little trick where you just kind of paint over whatever mark you want to get off the paper with a white gel pen. Just make sure that the paint underneath is dry. So for all of the lettering in these panels, I decided to add some little white dots around them just to give them interest. And I ended up really, really liking that technique. So I'll probably go back to that again in the future. I don't know that I've done that on any of my lettering before, but I definitely like the way that it looks. It kind of makes it look like they're lit up with, 1,000 little Christmas lights or something. So I like that, and I'll probably do it again. Here I'm just adding some white accents to the fruits. For the strawberries, I filled in the little white seeds in the strawberries with a white gel pen, adding a little highlight on the corner of the strawberries, and then around the edges of the little apricots or peaches or whatever that is, sticking out from underneath the fruit tart. And then for the blueberries, I added a couple of white dots here and there just to make them interesting looking and not flat. And so that's it. That is our Zig colored panel. Now we're going to move on to the Polychromos Pencils version. And Polychromos pencils are very new to me. I would say I probably have colored with them maybe 1 or 2 times before. I'm not, so I'm not a master of the techniques, but I did want to show you one of the techniques that I am familiar with from working with other colored pencils, and that's the use of Gamsol to kind of smooth out the surface of your colored pencil drawing. So that's what I was using, and I'm going to use it again on each of these little ice cream treats. And what I do when I use Gamsol is I will color in about half of the area that I want to fill in, and then I will blend it out with the Gamsol. And it's like an odorless mineral spirit. Also, if you have baby oil, that's something that would also work as a substitute. And as you can see, it takes away the grainy look of the pencil and makes it appear nice and smooth. And in terms of how it worked on this watercolor paper, I think that the watercolor paper is kind of toothy, so that was good because it gave the pencil something to kind of grip onto. And I think the Gamsol blends it out really, really nicely. That's what I'm doing here with this little orange popsicle. But in terms of whether this is the ideal paper for these pencils and for this method, that I'm on the fence. I think there's probably better papers out there, but this technique still works. And if you love your colored pencils, then I definitely think you could use your colored pencils to color in these watercolor panels by Simon Says Stamp. And like I said, this is the Sweet Treats panel, but I feel like every month or so they come out with a new set of 12 panels in a different theme. I know at Christmas time, there's a Christmas time set of panels. In the spring, there's something for the spring. For Easter, for Valentine's Day, for the different holidays there is. And I'm always tempted to buy them. And I think this is the first time that I actually purchase them and then use them. And I'm glad I did, because it was sometimes, when you're making cards, you don't want to go through the hassle of getting all your tools out and cutting things and gluing things together. And, sometimes you just want to sit down and color. And this little set of panels, it really gives you that opportunity. So I had a really nice time the last couple of days just sitting at my desk and coloring in all these cute little images and not making the mess that I usually make when I get all the rest of my equipment out. So, all right, so I am just finishing up this panel by adding some white gel pen accents, and the white gel pen, it does work over the covered pencils. So that's definitely something you could do. And we are done, except I am going to go over the corners with Distress Oxide ink just to add a little bit to the background. All right, so now let's take a look at all the panels that we were working on today and some new ones. The first panel on the left is the one we did with Copics. The little fruit tart is the one we did with Zigs. Then we have our ice cream treats that we just did. The sundae is one that I did off camera, as well as this other sundae to the left. The cookies I did off camera as well, and I'm going to show you two more that I did off camera. And the question for you I have is, and I'd like to hear what your thoughts are in the comment, can you spot the Copic colored panel out of these 5 panels? So among the cake and the cookies and the cinnamon bun and the 2 sundaes, which of those is the one that I colored in with Copic markers? The other 4 I colored in with Zigs. So I'm interested to see if anyone can kind of spot the difference between those 2 coloring techniques. So leave me a comment and let me know, and have a great day today. For those of you in the US, happy 4th of July, and I will see you soon with some more videos.